Hello, hello. Welcome in, everybody. Sorry, I wasn't muted. I just had a mic issue, but I was able to restart it. Welcome in. Monday night stream, guys. What's up? It is 9 o'clock. Oh my goodness. I'm actually much more creative at night, so I'm all ready to go. Are you guys? How many beginners do we have in here? Let's scroll up to the top. Welcome in, Mr. Gato. I haven't seen you in a long time. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Jess and Hafiz and Ramos. Hello, Day and Hidden Tides Gaming. Nice. You're studying your old college drawing textbook. Perfect. Perfect timing. And our lovely Kevin. Always super helpful. Hello, hello. Welcome in, everybody. Hello, Artemis and Shadowbean Arts. Nice to see you again. Swifty S'mores Day. Frog from Space. Woo! I'm Batman. Hello, hello. DJ Will DJ. This is a beginner stream. So if you are a beginner, you can ask me anything in this stream. I do have 10 things planned for you. These are the 10 most common things that people, the most common things that people ask me as a beginner. Whoops. Can't talk and write at the same time. 10 most common things I get asked from beginners. So, I got to admit, they're not all the common things because, you know, nobody ever asked me, Faye, how do I draw a grayscale? Nobody ever has asked me that. But I'm like, you guys, we all need to draw a grayscale together. You know, people ask me, what are some of the things, you know, I can do to get better at drawing things like faces? I get asked a lot, you know, how to draw bodies. I get asked a lot how to draw perspective. Okay, so if you can think of any other things, I am here to answer your questions today. Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome in. So, anybody new today? Anybody new joining for the first time? I know we never stream. We very, very rarely stream on Mondays. So I'm super, super excited to welcome some new faces. Grayscale is in values. Yes. Value scale. Yes. Nobody ever has asked me, how do I draw a value scale? But I'm going to show you guys today because it's really, really important. Feels weird seeing me draw on digital. I'm actually drawing on paper today. I'm just using digital for notes because it's a little cleaner. But yeah, I do have my traditional stream. Let me show you. It's over here. These are some heart texture drawings from my drawing foundation class, but I thought it would be nice to open up with. Yeah, I will be drawing traditionally, but I draw with both digital and traditional. And I think that, you know, if you are a digital artist or a traditional artist, you should definitely do one, like try the other. Okay. So if you normally draw traditionally, try digital art. If you mostly do digital, try drawing traditionally. It's really, really good to have both. Oh, wow. Lover of green. Thank you so much. That is super, super generous of you. Thank you so much. Wow. Santa's here. Except he's called Lover of Green. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so if you are new, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art and art education easily accessible to everyone. So, if you haven't been here before, we stream live lessons every week. And we're not just a YouTube channel, we're an online school of illustration. And our goal is to help art nerds turn their passion into income. And, you know, if you want to just draw for fun, that's cool too. We are here for you. If you're an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord. Discord's where all the action's at, you know, and this is where you'll find all of our notes, all of our artwork from streams, as well as amazing art challenges to keep you guys drawing and other resources to help you improve your art. So I also want to personally thank our incredible Patron and YouTube members for supporting our mission. So if you're a YouTube member, you can chat with our instructors and see video drafts before they are released. And Patreon members can level up their artwork with classes, Q&A, and live critiques, and personal support like drawovers from me and our other amazing instructors. So if you haven't joined the Discord, guys, that's where the action's at. Join our Discord. You'll find lots and lots of helpful resources there. And that's kind of where our team lives. So before we move on, we're going to feature some challenge submissions. So if you didn't know, every month we do a monthly challenge on our Discord, and this month's challenge is Future Fantasy. We have a lot of fantasy artists, D&D enthusiasts, and lots of artists who love the theme fantasy. It's one of our most popular themes. So we have some amazing work from our community that I'm really excited to share. But if you haven't submitted already, join our Discord, post your artwork that is themed Future Fantasy, and you can be featured on one of our streams. So our first submission is by Cranberry Spring. This is a piece that they did in the arcane style, and I know there's like a lot of hype around arcane. I just started watching it. Sorry, I was late, but the animation style is incredible. But yeah, I thought this illustration is really interesting looking, like with the green lighting with the face, and like it's just kind of like dark. I'm wondering what's going on. Really interesting use of lighting and color. I love like this the little bit of desaturated purple there that balances out the green. I thought this is really, really well done. So great job, Cranberry Spring. Love to see it. Okay, so our second submission is Chi of Many Worlds. Don't know if Chi's in the chat, but I'm pretty sure I saw Chi in the Discord. And so Chi is one of our verified critiquers. So if you're on the Discord, you know, she's always there giving feedback, streaming his artwork. And I thought this was incredible. What an amazing piece. So much character as well. And too bad it's so small. I'd love to zoom in on it to give you guys a closer look. But really, really nicely done. I like how her hair is green, and like that's like the only green part of the piece. It really draws attention to it, surrounded by all those reds and those dark hues. Really interesting color palette as well. It's kind of like it's like almost mostly complementary, split complementary. Beautifully done, Chi, as always. And our third submission is by Tricks. Tricks are for kids. Tricks Your piece is super cool. I love the text. I'm a graphic designer too, so I love the I love to see artwork that has text done well, and this one is done well. I'm not sure if that's a font or if you altered it yourself, but I really like it. And like it gives me the really it's like the vibes are super accurate, you know. I feel like I've been in this situation, just kind of like stuck in the rain. Um and anyway, I thought this was really really well done. Even the reflections are well done. So great job, Tricks. All right. Oh yeah, yeah. He does the monthly submissions on his last stream. That's awesome. So you guys, if you aren't on the Discord, get on there. You can get amazing support from fellow artists who will stream their process live. So anyway, join our Discord to submit your artwork for the challenge. All right. Just a reminder, Future Fantasy is, you have until the end of February. So lots of time left to submit. So if you're experiencing art block or you're not sure what to draw, here's your theme. Here's your prompt. Okay. So just going to catch up with the chat here. Any beginners here? Any beginners in the chat? Beginners, I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that you struggle with the most? And you know, if you're gonna say something like buildings in 3-point perspective, I'm gonna be like, well, that's not really beginner friendly. But all right. So let's see. Let's go to my traditional stream here. All right. So, hi, the Great October. Welcome in. Okay. So, just catching up here. Drawing shapes correctly. Limbs and joints. Okay. All right. So, this is a beginner stream because we realize we don't have a lot of beginner content on our channel. A lot of it is digital. A lot of it is quite advanced. So, I was like, okay, let's start by doing like a real beginner, really beginner stream. So, if you've never taken art classes before and you're kind of self-taught, well, hopefully you will learn something new in this stream. The first thing I'm doing is talking about pencils because a lot of people, you know, get these pencil sets and they're not quite sure what they mean, like what actually pencils they should use, and if they should use mechanical pencil or if they should use regular pencil. So I'm just going to talk about that quickly. So every pencil that you will get in the store that is not labeled or not part of a set is usually an HB pencil. So an HB pencil is just like your standard pencil, okay? And then everything sort of will either be darker or lighter than your HB. So your HB is your standard. Okay, so then you have your H pencils. So your H, you can remember that H stands for hard, okay? So the harder the pencil, the lighter it is. So hard pencils are really good for shading light tones. So HB here, this one is your standard, okay? This is kind of like your regular pencil that you can get anywhere. If it's a pencil that's not labeled, it's most likely an HB. So your H pencils, you can remember H stands for hard. So your H pencils are generally harder, which means that they are lighter. Okay, so they're lighter in value. And if you have a B pencil, let me try to find my 2B. So this is a B pencil. So B pencils are softer, and so they're darker. Okay, so this is my 2B. And then there's no 1B, but there's H and there's B. Okay, so like your H would go in between your HB and your 2H, but I'm just going to skip it. So bear with me, guys. These are like real basics. Okay, so this is the B pencil, but the B would be in between the HB and the 2B. Okay, so the greater the number, the darker it is, or the lighter it is, depending on the letter next to it. Okay, so this one, like let's say this one is a 5B. Okay, so 5B is much, much darker. So you can kind of see, right? If I try to make a dark spot with my 5B, it's pretty dark. However, if I try to shade lightly with this 5B, you'll see that it leaves a lot of texture. Okay, so B pencils are not only darker, they're a little bit more coarse. Okay, so similarly, if I try to shade with like a 4H, I love 4H pencils, by the way. So 4H pencils, a 4H, if I pressed as hard as I could, I might rip the paper. You don't want to be doing like your really, really dark darks with your H pencils, because they don't get that dark and you have to put a lot of pressure on it. So, like this is as dark as it goes with a lot of pencil pressure, and you can see like how much lighter it actually is, right? But if I wanted to shade like a really delicate area, like a super, super fine tone, look at how beautifully the 4H shades, right? Super fine. Like, look at that. Compared to this is very coarse. It has a lot of texture. Okay, so you want to have good, like you want to be pencil savvy. Okay, you want to use the right pencil or the right tool for the job. Okay, so your 2H is not only lighter, but it's also finer. Okay, so here's my 4H, and where's my 5B? Here's my 5B. Okay. So, my favorite pencils, obviously like HB is one that you should always have. But I don't usually go lighter than 4H. Like I would never really use a 6H or an 8H pencil, especially on stream, because A, you guys aren't even going to see it, right? And B, it's like I have to press too hard, so then I might just end up ripping my page. So all you really need is a 4H to about 4B or 5B. Like I can get really, really dark. Like this is like an 8B. I even have a 12B pencil, but I really never use it. So your range, when you are drawing, your range would typically be somewhere between 4H to about like 5B, okay, or 4B. But this is like a good range to have. And then with this range, you can get really, really nice pencil drawings. Really, you don't need to smudge. You can shade purely with pencil pressure. Okay, so this is, we're going to call it pencil. These are just like pencil basics. Okay. So now that you know the different range of pencils, we are going to draw a value scale together. Okay, because that is like the most boring thing. The most boring thing that you have to know as a beginner. It is the most boring thing, but if you know how to draw a value scale, your drawings are going to improve a ton. All right. All too bad, Shadow Bean Arts. You got school tomorrow. That's okay. You can always watch the replay. All right. So let's start with our value scale. Just catching up with chat here. The harder it is, the darker it is. No, it's the opposite. The harder it is, the lighter it is. Okay. So I just wanted to show you these pencils to start with, only because like I want to make sure that you're using the right tool to draw. Okay, because a lot of the times people will use mechanical pencils, and that's fine. Like mechanical pencils are okay, but you don't really get the same type of range. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is range or pencil pressure. Okay, so pencil pressure is really how you control your pencil, right? So for example, I see a lot of people, they'll kind of draw all of their lines the same way. So they'll kind of like draw an outline of like a face or something like this, right? And then they kind of use the same type of line all the way through, like, and you know, like that's okay, but it's actually, this is like kind of like a cartoony line, right? But if you want to have or practice really good pencil pressure, then you need to practice different types of line. Okay, so this is like your basic kind of cartoony line. You want to practice like lines that go from thick to thin, like this. You see how it kind of trails off, and then like thin to thick, right? All using the same tool. And then you can't really get that with a mechanical pencil, right? Whereas with like these types of pencils, you can actually get thicker lines like this. Like if you're shading, right, you can get much thicker lines like this. And then you can practice making lines that go from thin to thick, back to thin, trailing off, lines that sort of start and then stop and then start again, but visually they all continue, right? So this is what really pencil pressure is, and then the ability to kind of draw your lines getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. So you can see there's only so much I can do, you know, with this 6B pencil without it getting to look like it dissolves down here at the bottom. But if I use my 4H pencil and I do the same thing, right, I can get a lot lighter. I can get much greater range, but then when I get up here, this is as hard as I can go. So I would have to continue with a different pencil so I can go in with my HB. I wouldn't really skip too many, right? And then you eventually want to do like a perfect gradient. Okay, so pencil pressure is really, really important. And this allows you to not smudge, because a lot of beginners will also smudge, right? Like they'll shade something like this, and then they kind of use their finger and then they smudge and they're like, oh, look, it's shading. And I'm like, no, that's not shading, that's smudging. So it allows you to practice not smudging or not relying on smudging to shade things very well. All right. So let's draw our value scale. So if you have your pencils with me, let's do this together, because I want to get the boring thing done first so that we can move on to the things that are more fun. But fundamentals, you're basically like drawing a value scale is kind of like playing scales if you practice the piano. Does anybody here play the piano? Let me know if you play an instrument. Let me know in the chat if you play an instrument. Hello, Demolisher Infinite. You're a piano player? Okay, great. So you know what I'm talking about when I say scales, right? The dreaded scales. Like when I learned piano when I was a little kid, my mom put me in piano lessons. And she's like, and to me, I thought, oh my gosh, that's great. I get to play popular music. I get to play pop songs and I get to play like, no, I didn't. I got to practice scales. And it was not fun, but I had to learn how to do it, how to do the boring stuff. It's basically getting that out of the way and practicing it so much that you then have, like muscle memory built into your hands. So that you don't have to look down at your hands to play and you're very, very familiar with where the keys are, right? But nobody ever, as a beginner, will say, how do you play scales? Like, no one will ever say that. So same thing with the value scale. One thing to note about a value scale is the goal of the value scale is to learn pencil pressure. Okay, so the goal is to learn pencil pressure and to learn how to control your values and then also range, right? Being able to create a range of tones with pencil. So let me know if you've done a value scale before. But if you haven't, we will do one together. And this is like one thing you can cross off your list. Okay. So in a value scale, you really want it to be odd. Okay. So it should be odd, not even. And there is a reason for that. So if you see a grayscale and it has like 5 steps, that's odd. 7 steps is odd, right? 3 steps is odd. If you have like a 4-step grayscale, that's actually incorrect because of the approach to drawing a grayscale, and I'll explain why in a second. So I've just made a 7-step grayscale here, and I'm just using a kneaded eraser, like one of these pliable erasers, to lighten up the lines, because technically you don't want lines to be separating your values. You want your tones to be separating your values. Okay. So this is like the best thing that you could draw as a beginner, even though it's like, it's so basic, but it's always good to practice. Okay. And it's funny because one of the most prestigious art schools in my hometown of Ontario, they make you do a value drawing as part of the entry exam. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So let's learn how to do one together. I'm just trying to find my HB pencil. Okay. So the first step to drawing a grayscale is to figure out your floor and your ceiling. So the lightest light and the darkest dark. Okay, so you can put your light or your dark anywhere, but basically we're gonna take your darkest pencil. So here I have a 6B. I'm just gonna use my 5B, and I'm gonna color in this entire part. That's going to be dark, just kind of pressing really hard. Okay. It should cover it like butter, like really, really smooth. The nice thing about the soft pencils is it goes on super dark, and then you can just fill in all of those little flecks of white that you see. Okay, easy, right? Easy so far. Now, if you don't put in the darkest dark, so this is a 5B. If you don't put in the darkest dark, then you have no way of visualizing what middle gray is, right? Middle gray is a really important value because it essentially is in the middle of your light and your dark. So you'll notice that my paper is a little bit yellow, right? So this is the whitest I could get with this paper. So this tonal range depends on my tools and my paper. Okay, so if my paper was really, really white, then I would have obviously a greater tone. Or if I had like a 12B pencil or maybe like a black marker, right, then I would have a greater tone. But to determine middle gray, you need to have your darkest dark. Okay, so now I'm going to try and put in middle gray. So I'm going to use an H pencil. An HB would probably work as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a value that's exactly in between my darkest dark and my lightest light. This is harder to do than it looks. It looks really easy, but it's actually pretty challenging to get it exactly right. And there will need to be some adjustments along the way as well. So to get it really evenly, usually I'll turn my page, but because I'm streaming, I'm just going to try to shade it in one direction, which is actually pretty awkward to do. But anyway, just going to try to cover that up entirely. And you can see that there's a little bit of the paper showing. So if I want to blend it in, I can take my 4H and I can just give it another tone to make sure it's as nice and even as possible. Okay, so between this, and this, this is my attempt at the middle, right? And so it should be pretty even. Like this looks pretty dark compared to the white, and because it's not next to the black, it is hard to gauge if that's the right value. So then we're just going to start to do the others, and then just slightly, you know, this is all a visual exercise. Like really, you might have to make some adjustments, but the key is to get your range of values and perfect steps. So you want each step to be perfectly even. Now, this is something I have to do traditionally because there's no digital artist. You know, you can't really do this digitally. I mean, I guess you could choose from your your color picker, but that's not really developing pencil pressure, is it? That's just picking a color. So, all right. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to match the step between here and here. So right now, like the step between this and this and this and this look pretty even. So that means I need to make this one darker and this one lighter. Okay. So you can see how it gets to be a little bit challenging because you really need to, you really need to practice your values just from eyeballing and from pencil pressure and knowing how to use your pencils. Because I don't think I'd be able to make a really nice value scale with just dark pencils or just light pencils. Okay. So now that I have this and this, I can see that this and this are more similar than this and this. Okay, so I'm squinting. So if you squint with me, right, can you see that the step between this and this, right, and this are similar, but then this and this is a big jump, right? So this is where you need to shift your values and make one a little bit darker. Okay, so we're just going to build up the values so that they are exactly even in steps. Do tablets not have pen pressure? They do have pen pressure. They do. You could try to do this digitally, but it's not that accurate. And also, like, it's hard to erase, right? And like you have to use the right tool to be able to do this well digitally. So now you can kind of see, like, I made this a little bit darker. So the key is to squint and make sure that the difference in value between here and here and here and here and all of the steps are the same. Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit darker. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, and I'm just gonna turn my page so that easier for me to shade. So now I can get in and do this with my darker tones. So if this is my 5B, then I would probably use my B pencils, right? But even this one, like this one has a lot of holes in it that I'll have to fill in a little bit later. So you might think this is very basic stuff, and it is, but I can't tell you how many people I have worked with, how many students I've had who've been drawing for like 10 years and they've never done a grayscale. I was like, what? Cranberry Spring, welcome in. Your art got featured, artist in chat. In your own experience, tablet pressure works more like a paintbrush. It's true. Like, you really can't do this with a tablet. I mean, I guess you could. Okay, you could. You probably could do it. That might be an interesting challenge to try, actually, because I don't think I've ever done a digital value scale. Because like with digital tools, I just assume that you can't, like, why would you do this? You can just use the color picker. But yeah, I could try a digital grayscale, I suppose. So the reason why I like using these erasers is because, like, if you have a look at these two values, they're getting a little bit too similar, right? So what you can do is you can take a sheet of paper. This is a great hack for nice erasing, like erasing perfect lines. And you can just kind of go in and stamp your values, right? So you create that line. So this is something that would be really hard to do digitally. So it might be more painful than it's worth. I think with traditional, you're learning pencil pressure, which is really, really, like, that's really important. And you can see, like, I've drawn dozens of grayscales, I would say. I had to paint a grayscale once in gouache, and that was like the hardest thing I've ever done as an artist. Try painting a grayscale in gouache and not pulling out your hair, and try doing it in less than 4 hours. It's like so hard to do. It's because gouache dries a different color. So when it's wet, it looks perfect. And then when it dries, it's like a different color. So what I had to end up doing is painting all these swatches and then actually cutting them out and then putting them next to each other to find the perfect swatches, because it was just way too frustrating to do while it was wet. So pencil should be like the easiest way to do it, but even then, like, getting even steps is really challenging. So let me know if you're drawing along with me. Let me know how you're doing. I know we all want to draw faces and stuff, but this is probably more important. Okay, so this is a 5B. This, I think, was a 4H. This was an HB. And then, so, you know, you could do like 2B And then this one could be like a 2H. Just a sec. My dog's scratching at the door. I'm going to let her in. All right, so challenge, guys. If you have digital tools at your disposal and you're trying to do this digitally, let me know. Let me know how you got on, okay? Okay, so value scale, check. This is the probably the most fundamental, most basic thing that I had on my list, and a good way of practicing your pencil pressure. Mr. Gatto says, can this be done with a single pencil? Yes, but your range is not going to be as big. So let's say, that's a good question though. So let's say you choose your HB, because like that's in the middle, right? So if you chose an HB, where's my HB pencil? Here. No, that's 4H. Okay, so let's say you did a value scale with just one pencil. Technically, you could still do it. So technically, you know, I could press really, really hard, right? And get lighter and lighter and lighter as I go. So this is like a good way of practicing your pencil pressure as well. You know, you just get lighter and lighter and lighter. So yes, it is possible to do. You just won't get as much range as you would if you had a full set of pencils. But yeah, that's how you would do it with one. You would just kind of like very, very slowly kind of build it through to get a perfect gradient. You're using a number 2 pencil, so like a B pencil? What do you mean by number 2 pencil? You did value scale with a variety of techniques in high school, like this stippling, smudging, hatching, or cross hatching. Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Like the one thing I wanted to start with is pencil pressure, because that's like the most common thing that a lot of beginners just haven't done before. So if you have a great teacher in high school, then awesome. Then you would have done this before. But yeah, okay. So the second thing, we talked about pencils, we did value scale. The second thing is I want to talk a little bit about perspective. Okay, the different types of perspective and how to think about perspective as a beginner. Because it's scary. Like perspective can be kind of, it can be fun for some people, but for me in the beginning, it was really tough. Welcome in, Alpha the Artist. Okay, so I just want to say that I love sharp pencils, and I think that it's a really missed opportunity if you are drawing with dull pencils. Okay, so always keep your pencils really sharp. Do yourself a favor. It's like cutting with a dull knife. Like, you're not going to cut onions with a dull knife. Why would you draw with a dull pencil? It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, sharpen your pencils. It's just lazy. Yeah, it is a sharp point, but I love it. Okay, so the second thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about perspective. So perspective basics, okay? So we're going to talk about isometric. Then we're going to talk about 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective. And then we'll also talk about POV, which is our point of view. Okay, so if you've been in my drawing class before, I teach this over and over and over again because people still struggle with this. And it's a very, very simple concept. So draw along with me. If you have your sketchbook, open it up. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to draw a line. through it like this. Okay. This, my friends, is your POV, which stands for your point of view. Okay. So that means if I am, this is like your horizon line. Okay. Is your horizon line. What that means is my eyes, like let's say I'm looking at this line, your POV is your line of vision. So this is like where my eye is. All right. So if I'm, standing here, this would be my face and like this would be my body. Okay. So you'll notice that this line is where my eyes are. Okay. So that's really, really important to keep in mind, because if your POV changes, then your perspective changes. Okay. So let me explain. If you are looking up at something, so let's say we have a, let's say we have a coin. Okay. Or, okay, we'll call it a plate. Let's say we have a plate. So if you have a plate and your plate is above your line of vision, okay, you're going to see the top of that plate. Or sorry, the bottom of that plate. You're going to see the bottom of that plate. You won't see the top of the plate. So let's say, I'm just going to keep it really simple and just kind of draw a flat disc, okay? You're only going to see the bottom of it. Now, with that same plate, okay, if that plate is lower than your POV, then you're going to see the top of the plate. So here you see the bottom, here you see the top, okay? Now, what's interesting is that the higher that plate goes in space, the more of the top or the bottom you're going to see of that plate, okay? So what I mean is, like, let's say the plate is up here. Can you see how that cylinder is now wider? And let's say the plate is a little bit higher. Okay. Now that cylinder is even wider. Now let's say my plate keeps going up in space, keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher until I'm looking straight up at that plate, right? So if I'm like looking straight up at that plate, now that plate is right above my head. Okay, so here's me. I'm looking up, right up at it. Now it's going to be a perfect circle. Okay, so the same thing at the bottom. The lower it goes, the wider that circle is going to be. Okay, now you might be like, why does that matter, Faye? Like, that's so basic. Why does it matter? Well, I'll tell you why. Because people don't know how to draw cylinders. People always struggle with drawing cylinders, and I'll explain. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to draw a dog bowl. Okay, so here's the top of my bowl, and then here's the bottom, and then boom, they're like, it's flat. And I'm like, why did you make the bottom flat? Why did you make the bottom flat? And it's like, no, don't do this. Okay. I can't tell you how many people I see that do this. And that's because they don't understand this concept of cylinders changing as they get further and further into space. So how you should be drawing a dog bowl is you figure out, am I looking down at it, or am I looking up at it? Well, if it's a dog bowl, you're likely gonna look down at it, right? So if it's a dog bowl, it's probably gonna be about here. So I'm gonna see the top of that bowl, and then the bottom of the bowl. Guess what? The bottom cylinder is going to be even like rounder than the top cylinder, right? Because the bottom cylinder is over here. Okay, so this bottom has to be rounder than the top if you are looking down at it. And the same thing if you are looking up at something. So if I'm looking up, right, I'm drawing the bowl. So let's say I'm drawing the bowl here. Okay. If I'm looking up at the bowl, that top curve has to be greater than the bottom curve. Maybe not by much, but it has to be greater for it to work. Otherwise, it's going to look so weird. It's just going to look weird. And cylinders are the number one thing I see people struggle with. It's cylinders. Every single time I'm like, that doesn't look round. Fix the cylinder. Fix the cylinder. Where's the top and bottom of the cylinder? Cylinders, people, get them right. So if you know that, if you know the basics, okay, figure out where your POV is, figure out how far away that circle is from your POV, and you'll be able to draw perfect cylinders every single time. Okay, my rant about cylinders is almost done, I promise. Cylinders is the number one thing people always get wrong. Okay, so if you are drawing other shapes, now this works with other shapes as well. This works with cubes. Okay, so same thing, right? Like if you're drawing a, let's say you're drawing a box, or the bottom of a box, okay? Then if it's above your POV, right, you'll see the bottom of that box. Okay, this is the 1-point perspective, by the way. These lines are kind of going towards a vanishing point in the middle. And then the same thing, right? So if my box is down here, let's say my box is down here, right? If it's down here, then this box, right, would be slightly less wide than this box. So it's the same thing. It kind of all follows the same type of rule, right? The farther it goes down, well, the box is square, so these are flat shapes. It's a little bit hard to see, but basically it works with all kinds of shapes. Okay, so that's POV. That's one thing we can check off the list is POV. Okay, and then let's do isometric. So what is the difference between isometric and perspective? Isometric. Okay. So isometric, you might have seen before. It's in a lot of video games. It's basically when, let's say you draw a cube. Okay, so I'm going to draw it over here. Let's say you draw a cube. You would start with the corner. I mean, you could start with the corner of the cube, or you could start with the base of the cube, but let's say you start with the corner. So with an isometric cube, all of the lines are parallel. Okay, so if you know your parallel lines, right, it just means that these two lines, if you extend them forever, they will never touch. And then same thing with these lines. If you extend them forever up and down, they will never touch. Okay, so that is isometric. Isometric is a way of drawing 3D forms without perspective. Okay, so this looks like a 3D form. And it basically is okay, right? Like you could draw things in isometric. It's a good exercise for when you're trying to practice things in 3D, but there's no vanishing points. So isometric has no vanishing points. So no vanishing points, which means it's not true perspective. This is not real perspective. Now, if I was to draw a cube in real perspective, and I'm not even going to make any vanishing points or anything like that, but I'll just show you the difference. So the same process, except the lines at the top and bottom converge. Okay, so if I took two pencils and I kind of put them together, you can see that these two lines will eventually converge at a point. Okay, so they're not parallel. They will eventually touch. Okay, so if you look at the cube at the top and the cube at the bottom, right? The cube on the bottom is kind of more exaggerated, but it looks more like true perspective than the cube at the top. So this is a 2-point perspective. So this has two vanishing points. Okay, so that's the difference between isometric and 2-point perspective. Now, there's some things you can do, like, for example, you can shade the different sides to make it look like it's more 3D. And you'll notice that when I do shade the sides, I change the direction of my shading. Okay, because if I shaded everything going in the same direction, there's just like less information in terms of my line direction to really set them apart. So if I didn't have the line in the middle, you would be able to see separation based on the direction that I'm shading. Okay, so there are some things that you can do in terms of 3D shapes, or sorry, 3D forms. But knowing the difference between isometric and perspective is a good one, because then you'll be able to recognize like why something doesn't look very realistic versus something that gives the illusion that it's going back into space. False perspective. Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. False perspective. So there's a lot of video games that use isometric, right? And they're really fun. And we do a lot of isometric exercises at Wing Canvas in our classes because they're a lot of fun. Like we have this one exercise where we draw an environment in isometric perspective, and it's kind of like a good way to design a video game space. You know, you don't really have to worry about perspective, but you can kind of get the illusion of 3D space. So there's nothing wrong with isometric. It's not true perspective. Okay, so we went over 2-point perspective. We kind of did 1-point perspective. So 1-point perspective is, instead of starting at a corner, you're actually just starting with like the face of your cube, right? You're starting with just the square, and then you're converging the sides to the vanishing point. Okay, so this is a 1-point. This has 1 point. This is a 1-point. They're a little bit further down in terms of POV, but still you can see the difference. The only difference is, like, if you're doing 2-point perspective, you start with a corner. And if you're doing 1-point perspective, you start with the face of the cube, or a one wall, like flat wall versus corner. Okay, so I'll talk about 3-point perspective very briefly. So if you are drawing something in 3-point perspective, usually what you would want to do is, like, let's say you're drawing a piece in 3-point perspective. You want your vanishing points to be outside of your page. So let's say this is your page, right? You want your vanishing points to be like off of your page, like this. Like, say that's the horizon line, and then this is your third vanishing point. You don't want to have your vanishing points all on the page, because then your piece looks super distorted. This is a common mistake that I see people make. They'll like draw a perspective drawing, and then they'll like force the vanishing points onto the sheet of paper, and then it just looks super, super distorted. So if I was to draw a 3-point perspective, let's say I'm starting down here with 3-point, you would also start with a corner. Okay, so you would also start with the corner here. And then if I was to bring, let's say I'm going to bring my vanishing points up this way, I'm just drawing it out without actually measuring. So I'm going to bring, there's one vanishing point, two vanishing points. So now I can find the corners of my cube. Okay. And then the third vanishing point is going to be really, really low. So let's say it's going to be like off my page. Okay. Let's say it's going to be like over here. So say it's there. And then what I would do is I would follow, use a ruler here. I'm going to follow my vanishing points and draw in my sides like this. Okay, and then the other sides will connect to the 2 points over on this side. Okay, so there's my 3-point perspective. You can see that it's a little bit more kind of more exaggerated down here at the bottom, right? So you can kind of see that it's a bit more distorted compared to the 2 points. So the 2 points have parallel vertical lines going this way, and the lines that are going in perspective, like in the 2-point perspective, right? If I follow the vanishing points up here, right? If I follow these vanishing points, these would actually be converging, but these lines, these 3 lines would not be converging. Okay, whereas with 3-point, everything converges to a point. All the lines converge. So this is 3-point. So these are just some general, just a very general demo of things in 3-point perspective. So anyway, this is just really basic perspective. A lot, you wouldn't believe how many people don't know this about cylinders. And the other thing I want to say about cylinders is my example is with like a peanut butter jar. Okay, so let's say that you're drawing a peanut butter jar and you have it in your hand, you're kind of holding it, you're looking down at it, right? What most people do is they'll like draw the top of the jar, and then they'll draw the bottom of the jar like this, and then they connect it, and they're like, yay, I drew a peanut butter jar, look at me go, right? Like, yeah, okay. yes, technically yes. But what you should be drawing, if you really want to get good at perspective, is you want to be able to like know how to foreshorten things, right? So really what it is you're drawing one cylinder that's below the vanishing point. Okay, so you're drawing one cylinder that's below the vanishing point. Then you're drawing another cylinder kind of like in the middle. So this is more getting into structure drawing, right? And then you draw like another cylinder that gets a little bit wider. So you can see this one is wider than this one, right? Because it's lower. It's more like it's further away from your line of vision. So then your actual peanut butter jar, okay, would, like, this curve is greater than this curve. Now, visually, you may not even notice the difference. If you don't notice the difference, then you did it right. If you draw, you know, just two ellipses, like you're drawing a cylinder, but you're like drawing 2 ovals, and those 2 ovals are the same, you'll notice that this peanut butter jar just doesn't look as realistic as this peanut butter jar does. And it's all in your cylinders, okay? It's all in the bottom being more curved. This is like the most basic thing that I see everybody get wrong. And I'm like, practice your cylinders, people. It is going to be much better. The curve is bigger because that oval is closer to you. No, the curve is bigger because that oval is farther away from you. So if this is your, let me see if I can demonstrate it somehow. Okay, so here I have some foot cream here. This is just like a random foot cream, not sponsored or anything. But okay, so this is right now, the camera is looking directly at it. Okay, so now the camera's looking above it. Now the camera's looking below it. Okay, so you can see that like this curve here should be greater than this curve here, right? But because the jar is so narrow, you don't really see that difference. But you do start to see the difference when you have like a jar that's actually greater. So here's my tea. Okay, here's my tea. So if the water bottle, this water bottle is like too big, so it doesn't actually fit. But like, let's say the water bottle is directly on my horizon line, then the top is going to curve this way and the bottom is going to curve this way, right? So then the top of my water bottle goes this way. Like these are all based on the same kind of curve, right? And then you can see as like, pretend this water bottle has stripes on it, okay? So as it moves closer to the horizon line, right, these lines are going to get less wide, okay? So this is kind of why you want to, this is like the ring method or the coil method. Like if you're drawing an arm or a leg going in space, right, then drawing coils on something will help you draw the form much better in a much more clear way. So this is my water bottle here, right? That's if it's sitting directly on the horizon line. Okay. So those are some ways you can think about perspective. This is a really, really just like an easy way to think about it. Okay. So let's see what we have next. Next on the list, so we got through value scale, we got through perspective. That's like a lot of things already done. I talked about cylinders. Okay, so now let's do some shading. So we shaded a pretty boring shape. Now let's shade our sphere, and we're gonna talk about shadows. Okay, we're gonna talk about shadows. And the different types of shadows. This is a demo that I've done like 100 times, but it seems to be relevant more often than I would like, so I end up drawing it a lot. Okay, so we're gonna draw the sphere here. Okay, so do your best to kind of draw a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so I did that with a 2B. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna imagine that we're gonna draw this sphere, that this is a ball, and there's a light source and there's a shadow. Okay, so here we go. Here's the light source. Light's coming from the left-hand side, and there's going to be a surface. So the ball is sitting on a surface. So let's say the surface is like here. There's the edge of the table. Okay, so the ball is sitting on a table. Now, if there's light hitting that ball, it's going to bounce off the table because the table is going to reflect light back onto the ball. So what we're going to do is we're going to determine where the shadow is first. Okay, so if we have a light source, then typically speaking, there will be a highlight on that ball that looks somewhat like that. Okay, it's like kind of in this area here. And then if you go back and you think about your grayscale, okay, it's going to get slightly darker and then slightly darker. And then like this half of the ball, okay, the bottom half of the ball is going to be in shadow, right? And then between the shadow and the highlight is the transition area, okay? And then there's going to be a shadow, like a cast shadow that's cast from this ball. So let's say I draw the cast shadow. Now the cast shadow has to be the same shape as the object, okay? So I see people draw a ball and then they draw like a long line for a shadow. And I'm like, no, it has to be the same shape because this is a cast shadow, meaning it's being cast by this shape. So if this shape was a donut, okay, there's going to be a hole in that cast shadow, right? Because there's going to be light going through the donut. So whenever you're drawing shadows, you got to make sure that the shape is a distorted version of this shape, okay? Because it's an oval because it's flat. It's flat on a surface. And it's important to know where that surface is to also know what your shadow is going to look like. Okay, so what we're going to do, going back to our pencils, is I'm going to take my darkest pencil, I'm going to take my 5B, and I'm going to put it right underneath that ball. This type of shadow right here, this is going to be the darkest part of your cast shadow, and this is called ambient occlusion. Let me write that down. Ambient occlusion. So this type of shadow is the shadow that is made when there's like no light because there's two objects that are so close together in proximity that they're blocking the light. So the two objects is the surface of the table and the surface of the ball. Okay, so this is going to be where the darkest shadow is. Now, why do I put that in first? Because like with the grayscale, when we drew the grayscale, we drew the darkest part first. Why? Because it gives us context for everything else. I can't tell you how many people will like draw something and then they shade it, they shade it, they shade it, they shade it. They're like, la, 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 I'm going to shade, I'm going to keep shading, and I'm going to start with my lightest values, and I'm going to get a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. 5 hours later, they're still shading. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You start with your darkest values first. If you start with your darkest values first, everything else will have more context, right? So let's get this shadow in. I talk about this in the hair tutorial as well. Like on our website and on our channel, we have so many videos that help you learn these fundamentals or that help you apply them. This stream is like, I'm really, really going to go to the basics. So just treat it as a review if you already know this stuff, and hopefully you will remember something that is helpful. Okay, so you'll notice that this shadow has a gradient, right? So things that are, as it moves away from the object, this cast shadow gets lighter. It also gets blurrier, right? So like down here, this cast shadow is going to have a hard edge. It's going to have like, it's going to start off with a hard edge. And then as it moves away from the surface, it's going to have a very blurry edge. Right? Because the farther away your shadow is, the blurrier it is. So look at the shadow on my hand right now. You see how it's like blurry and then sharp and then blurry and sharp. So it's the same thing. Very simple. As it moves away from the object, the farther away the cast shadow is from the object, the softer the shadow is going to be. Okay, so we drew the shadow. Now we have this beautiful ball to shade. So the first thing I'm going to do is shade in the dark areas. So I'm probably going to use my 4B. And I'm going to start shading in the bottom half of this circle. And when I shade, it's pretty structured. Like I'll shade the darkest part first. And then I'll get like my midtones in, and then I kind of work my way through that. So don't start shading with like your 4H and go little by little by little. That's painful. Just like remember that value scale exercise, right? Those steps are how you want to approach your shading. Okay, so now that I have that shadow in, I'm like, okay, now I can go in with like my H pencil. So here's my H pencil. And I'm going to get a little bit lighter. So now I'm just kind of getting into the transitions, right? And then I'm going to work my way to the highlights. So if you want the highlights to be really bright, then you really have to make the surrounding area dark, right? Otherwise, there's no highlight. So I'm going to erase my circle there. So I teach drawing foundations at Wing Canvas, and it's like a weekly class on Thursday nights. And I end up like teaching a lot of the same lessons over and over again. You guys are getting it tonight. It's like everything that are like the fundamentals that I end up going over every single time, because it's somehow it's forgotten. Like somehow we get really distracted by you know, characters and colors and like all these stories that we want to tell. And you know, I'm all about telling stories, but I also think that it's really important to understand the art fundamentals, like, because like even if you don't end up drawing, having knowledge of the fundamentals will help you be a better designer, art director, communicator, visual storyteller, probably art director, right? Because like, you know, what we all know when something looks weird, we all know when something looks off, but to actually know what is off, exactly what is off, that's being a good art director. Okay. So when you're shading a sphere, it's a good idea to build up your values using pencil pressure. You'll notice that I'm not smudging anything. If you're smudging anything, I'm giving you a -1. Okay. Every time you smudge, you lose charisma points. Every time you smudge. You get a -1. Every time you switch your pencil and even it out using hard pencils, you get a +1. Okay. So there's one thing that's missing right now, and that's called the core shadow. And so the core shadow is caused by reflected light. So this right here is the cast shadow. Okay, I'm getting super technical because this matters, because different shadows have different properties. I shouldn't have wrote this here. I should have like put it over here. Like the darkest part in here is called ambient occlusion. Okay, and then this shadow over here, this is called the form shadow. The form shadow is caused by the form. You're like, duh, that's why it's called the form shadow. No, I'm kidding. The form shadow exists because this is a sphere and this side of the sphere is getting less light. Okay, it basically is like the shadow that describes the object as being round, square, you know, furry, uh, clear. Yes, there are shadows in clear objects or cast by clear objects. We have a video on that, on how to shade transparency, believe it or not. You can thank Jesse for that. But yeah, if you're a habitual smudger, I'm gonna challenge you to not smudge again and to try and use pencil pressure and use your lighter or your harder pencils to shade instead of relying on smudging. It will make you a much better shader. I promise. Okay, so I'm gonna put in a core shadow. I'm trying to find my my 4B. Where's my 4B pencil? Okay. So within a form, there's going to be the darkest part of the form shadow, which is called the core shadow. Okay. So it's generally within the form shadow. There's like a dark part. Okay, so can you see I kind of put in like a dark moon shape in here? There we go. Okay, so that is my core shadow. Types of shadows, people. This is really, really important because different shadows have different properties. Okay, form shadows. Let me use a mechanical pencil for my notes. Okay, so form shadows are the shadows that are cast on the form. So form shadows are typically on spheres. They typically have softer edges on spheres. So like softer edges. So like on round objects, right? They're not going to have soft edges on hard objects, right? Because it depends on the form. So softer edges on round objects. Like there are round edges. What? On round objects. Softer edges on round objects. Core shadows have harder edges. So they have harder edges close to the form. Let's erase this. Okay, so core shadows. Whoops, I wrote that in the wrong spot. Cast shadows. Sorry, guys. Cast shadows have harder edges. And then they get softer as they move away from the form. The form. And then they have harder edges closer to the form. And then core shadows. Core shadows will only exist with reflected light. So core shadows are the darkest part of a form. They are the darkest part of a form, so the darkest part of a form shadow. And then the reflected light is light that's bouncing off of the surface. So core shadows will not exist without reflected light. So reflected light causes core shadows. Okay. So what that means is, like, let's say I'm drawing a planet. Okay. A planet that's in space. I give the analogy of like a moon. So if you think about our moon, okay, so let's say there's the moon. The moon has a really hard edge, right? It's a really hard edge. Why does it have that hard edge? Well, it's being cast by the Earth. So this is the Earth. This is the moon. The sun is like over here, right? Here's the sun. So the sun is shining on the moon, but the Earth is like so far away from the moon, but yet it casts this hard shadow on the moon, okay? Like so hard. And why don't you see any reflected light? Like why is there no core shadow on the moon? Well, because the moon is in space. It's not on a surface. It's not on a table. There's nothing to reflect light on that moon. Okay, so that's why the moon has that hard shadow. The moon is formed, like the shape of the moon, or the crescent shape of the moon, is formed by the Earth casting a shadow on it, which is why cast shadows have hard edges. So the stronger the light source, the harder that edge is going to be. Okay, so if I put like a really, really bright spotlight on this sphere, then this cast shadow is going to be super, super crisp, like super sharp and super crisp. But if I have a soft light source, then this shadow is going to get softer as it moves away from the form. Okay, so think about the relationship between like the Earth and the moon, and remember your shadows. Remember your types of shadows. This will change how you draw, and you will level up way faster. So, ambient occlusion is basically like the shadow caused by two forms touching and therefore no light entering. Okay, so ambient occlusion is usually the darkest part of the shadow. Okay, so the core shadow is the darkest part of a form. Ambient occlusion is the darkest part of the shadow. Cast shadows have hard edges. Form shadows have softer edges. Now, I know this is super technical, but this comes in handy when you're drawing things like, let's say you're drawing like arms, right? Or like if you look at my hand, for example, right? If I have something that's like, that's casting a shadow on my hand, right? I'll be able to draw a cast shadow and with like slightly hard edges, and you'll recognize that as a cast shadow. Whereas if I drew a form shadow with soft edges, then for some reason, like it's like intuitive, right? You're not really thinking about these terms, but for some reason it looks more realistic. And so that's kind of the reason why it's important to know all of these things. Okay. Astronomy and art, it's all connected. Yes, yes, it is. Okay, so we did the boring stuff. Now let's get into some faces. Okay. So the other thing that a lot of people ask me is, how do I draw a face from the side? So let's pretend that we are going to draw a face from the front and a face from the side. Okay. And then I promise I will put everything together and show you how knowing the types of shadows will allow you to shade faces out of your head with any light source, make it up. And it's really, really cool to see. So I'm interested to see what you guys like. What do you guys struggle with when it comes to faces? Because most people, if you're in the chat, let me know. Like, what do you struggle with the most? I feel like with most people, it's proportions. So I'm going to do a very simple drawing of a face from the front and a face from the side. And hopefully this will clear up a lot of the confusion. Eye line. Okay. Queen Creeper says ears. Okay, so like drawing an actual ear, or what do you mean by ears? Like the placement of the ears? um, okay. So let's draw some faces, okay? So we're gonna start off with our circle. So with a face, I like to construct it using a ball and a shield. A ball and shield. So it's like a ball and then a shield like this. Okay. So you can kind of think of it like that. And so proportionally, like let's say you draw a circle, okay? What you want to do is take half of that circle. So take this distance, right? And you're going to put it at the bottom. Okay, so you can just eyeball it and put it at the bottom like that. Okay, and then now this is where you can draw your shield. So depending on whether your face is male or female, male and female faces have different characteristics, but for now I'm just going to draw, why don't I do male on one side and female on the other side? I do that, but then it looks kind of weird. But okay, anyway, so there's your general head shape. Okay, so you take this distance and you put it at the bottom. Okay, so eyes, where are eyes on the face? Eyes are typically, would you say they are near the top, near the bottom, in the middle? Where would you say? So let's see the chat. Side face, you can't get the lips part specially. No worries, I will do that. The position of the eyes in relation to the position of the face, like eyes at 3/4 view. Okay. I feel like I struggle with the mouth and nose connecting from the side. The mouth always ends up looking off. Okay, cool. Yes, the middle, exactly. So generally speaking, the eyes should be in the middle. So if you look at this, right, because we divided this into 3, right? So it should be roughly in the middle. Now, even though I say like the general rule is the eyes are in the middle, it depends on the age of the person. Okay, because like generally speaking, like younger people will have smaller, shorter faces and their eyes will be lower on their face. And if you're drawing somebody who's like older, right, their eyes will be higher on their face. So for example, I'm just going to do some cartoons just to show you the point here. So if I was to draw a face like this, look at how low the eyes are. Okay. See that tiny little face? This looks like a child. Now, if I drew a slightly longer face and I put the eyes a little bit higher and I make the ears bigger, right? There's the nose. That looks like an older person, right? And you'll notice that like the older person, I put the eyes a little bit higher. And then on the younger person, I put the eyes a little bit lower. On the older person has bigger ears, a bigger nose. The younger person has smaller ears and no nose. So it depends, like the eye placement, yes, it should be in the middle if you're drawing an adult. But generally speaking, if you move it higher, the person looks older. If you move it lower, the person looks younger. Okay. So if you draw in your eyes, so the distance between your eyes should be the same width as the eye itself. So let's say the eye is going to be roughly this wide. The distance between the eye is the same width as the eye. Okay. And again, this is just like generally speaking. There are some people with eyes closer together, some people with eyes further apart. That's when your likeness will play more of a role. and like you can exaggerate and stuff like that. Typically speaking, I will just make the top of the eye darker. And then I won't draw the bottom of the eyelid. I'll just kind of leave it. Because if you draw the bottom of the eyelid, then it starts to look like the person's wearing eyeliner or they're very tired. Because generally speaking, our lashes sort of combine at the top and it just generally looks darker. There's also a shadow on the top of the eye, which like makes the eyelid at the top look darker than the bottom. You'll also notice that I didn't draw the circle directly in the middle of the eye because then it doesn't look very natural, right? In a relaxed eye, the top of that circle is cut off. Okay, so I'm just going to draw in the eyes. Okay. Now, if I want one eye to look more feminine, you know, like I'll give her some eyelashes, sure. I know lots of guys with longer lashes than me, but, you know, whenever I'm drawing portraits of females, I'll always give them eyelash extensions because, you know, why not? It's easy to do. I could do that for you. Sometimes there's a fold in the eye as well. Okay, so there's my female eye, and then for the male eye, I'm gonna just keep it more lashless, I guess. And I might add some more angles to the eye. Typically speaking, male eyes have more angles and female eyes have more curves. Okay. All right, so next we'll put in the nose. So the bottom of this circle is where the nose will sit. So what I like to do is I just kind of draw in an oval shape that's the same width as the distance between the eyes, like this. That's the bottom plane of the nose. And then I'll draw in the outside of the nose like this. How important is the plane of the skull between the eyes? It is important. Hey, Krem, welcome in. Yes, they are. It is important. It is important when it comes to shading, and more important when it's like being seen at the side. So, for example, when you say the plane of the skull between the eyes, it's actually this shape here, right? This shape here, and then like this shape here around the eyes. These are like the eye sockets. So the eye sockets are kind of like almost like hexagons. Like if you imagine sunglasses, right? That's kind of where they sit. So this goes more into the structure of the face. Right now I'm talking about proportions. But yeah, it's this part. Let me know if that's the part you're talking about. But yeah, this part is typically in shadow on most people. Yeah, it is very important. Okay, so easy nose, right? Just shade the bottom and then bring the tops. I see a lot of people, they'll draw like the lines. They'll be like, woo, there's a nose. I'm going to draw the 2 lines of the nose. And I cringe and I'm like, please don't do that. Don't. You don't need to do that. Yeah, don't do that. Just draw like the bottom of the nose, and then the top of the nose you can add shading to later. But yeah, don't draw 2 lines on either side. That's a no-no. Unless it's like the style of cartoon that you're doing, then fine. If you're drawing a cartoon or stylizing anything, no problem. You can break all the rules. Okay, so mouth. I see a lot of people, they'll like draw the mouth and they'll put it like right in the middle. They're like, okay, between the nose and the chin, I'm going to put my mouth right there. I can't tell you how many people do that. And I'm like, no. That's not where the mouth goes. It's not where the mouth goes. um, Queen Creeper, I know you're saying, are they on the line to the ears, so to the middle? Yes, they are. I'm going to talk about ear placement in just a second. I'm just going to talk about mouth placement first. So yeah, don't put your mouth line in the middle between your nose and your chin. It's not in the middle. It's more like 1/3 of the way. Okay, so like 1/3 is like between the nose and chin. So the mouth opening is 1/3 of the distance between the nose and the chin. And if you guys are interested in learning more about mouths, I have a whole video that is very recent that I go into, you know, how to draw mouths and teeth and lips and all that stuff. So right now I'm just kind of going through the basics because a lot of people want to know how to draw faces. So this is how you draw faces. Here's my mouth. So you'll notice that I didn't draw like a full line. That's because most bottom lips are in, are like the top of the lip is usually in shadow, and then the bottom lip is usually getting more light. That's why I kind of made it light. And you know, there is a shadow that's being cast shadow below the mouth here. Right? And usually speaking, like if there is a light source, let's say the light source is coming from one side again, okay, then there would usually be a cast shadow on the nose. Okay, so this is why you see a lot of images, like they have like a little bit of a shadow like this. That's a cast shadow that's on the nose. It has harder edges. Right? But depending on how hard the light is, it might have softer edges. So you can add that in, and then you can start to add in the eye sockets. Okay. If you wanted to make up some lighting. And then eyebrows. So eyebrows, typically speaking on females, right? They're a little bit more manicured. And eyebrows tend to arch and peak about 2/3 of the way. Okay, so like this, right? So this is roughly 2/3 of the way. That's where it peaks. Okay, eyebrows don't peak like this unless you're drawing clown eyebrows or mime eyebrows or cartoony eyebrows. That's fine, but usually speaking they do not peak in the middle. They peak about 2/3 of the way. Okay, so there's my eyebrow. Now male eyebrows, if you're drawing male characters, they tend to be a little bit closer to the eye, which is why in a lot of anime characters, the males always look kind of angry. They just tend to be a little bit closer to the eye itself, and they tend to be like a little bit thicker, you know. And depending on the age of the face, do you want to add wrinkles? Like if you wanted to add wrinkles, like try not to draw like one thick line like that. Especially on like a resting face, like a neutral face. Like if there is some lines, you can draw them as broken lines. It just tends to look a little bit better. Ear placement is typically between the eyes and the nose. So generally speaking, it's like here on a face that's looking from the front. And obviously, like if you're drawing somebody older or somebody younger, you can make the ear smaller or make the ear bigger, right? Older people have bigger ears and bigger noses. Younger people have smaller ears and smaller noses. So for the female ear, you know, I would draw it maybe a little bit more with curves, and on the male side, I added more angles, but that's up to you. So don't forget the jaw. On the female face, it might be a little less obvious, and then on the male face, I'm going to put more of a chiseled jaw and maybe more of a chiseled chin. So you can see, like, with just a little bit of chiseling, I can make a face look more male or more female. Okay. And then, you know, hairline. So hairline, if you want to make it up, I always suggest referencing your own hair. Everybody has hair. If you reference your own hair, you will be much better off. Just like looking at what happens over here, like there's a big mystery here. A lot of people, even like pretty advanced people or people who've been drawing for a long time, they like forget the sideburns, and then the hair looks super weird, just super weird. I mean, there are weird haircuts that don't have sideburns, but like so many people forget sideburns, and I'm just like, why? Those are so important. I mean, everybody has sideburns. Even princesses have sideburns, right? Like, you don't have to be Elvis to put sideburns on. Like, everybody has them. But males, like, their hair grows or is like combed backwards, whereas females, it's kind of combed in the opposite direction. So like either going this way or combed backwards, whereas males, their hair kind of, if they slick their hair, they would slick it forwards. Okay, typically speaking. So it's just something you can keep in mind. Why am I shading with mechanical pencil? Where's my nice 2B pencil? So the other thing I see a lot of people do when they shade hair is they don't give the hair enough volume. So if the top of the head ends there, they'll like shade the hair right up to that edge. And I'm like, no. Like, hair has volume unless it's wet or unless somebody is bald. Like, the hair should have volume. Don't forget about the volume. Okay, last thing I'm going to talk about is necks, and then we're going to move on to the next one. So if you're drawing males, right, males tend to have thicker necks. Okay, so that means that their necks would be a lot thicker. So if this is the midline here, a female neck might be like here, right? And then there's like the shoulder line, whereas males would have much thicker necks, and if they're really muscular, right, their shoulders might be like higher, and you might see some of that trapezoid muscle, not trapezoid, trapezius from the back. You might see that kind of showing through. So those are some of the differences between male and female faces. So hopefully I've covered most of it. I'm just going to check the chat. You shave your sideburns? Yeah, but they grow back. You can still see them. Learning realistic anatomy helps make it easier to draw in general, even with exaggerated cartoony styles. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So knowing also like how to shade things and like the anatomy of the face will also help you shade out of your head. So I'm not going to go into details. I'm only going to go into proportions because this is a beginner's fundamentals stream. Okay, so most people, when they start drawing faces, and I just wanted to make sure that I covered that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to draw is a face from the side. This confuses a lot of people, profiles are actually pretty hard to draw. And so I have a really easy method for drawing a side profile. Okay. So best for beginners to know values later on. No, I disagree with that. I think beginners should know values early on but beginners rely too much online. And then they're like, I can't get out of like I just don't know why my drawings don't look realistic. It's like, yeah, well, you've outlined everything and you haven't really focused on your values or your form, which is why I started with the grayscale, because nobody wants to do it. Even like when I draw a color wheel, or when I tell my painting students, like, okay, we're gonna draw a color wheel, or we're gonna do a grayscale, people complain, and I'm like, really? Like, it's like me telling you to eat your broccoli or something, like eat your vegetables. No, well, I don't like it. It's healthy. Like eat your vegetables. No. Well, okay. Well, that's kind of what your value scale is like, right? It's not fun to eat, but it's healthy for artists. Okay. Sorry, you put me on a rant there, Butter. How long do you need to draw the necks? Sometimes I have a problem with how long I should draw them. Good question. Good question. Necks are also age dependent. Okay, so let's go back to our baby and our older person here. Okay, so the baby might have like a small neck, like a tiny neck, because if a baby had a really long neck, their head would fall over. Their heads are way too big for their bodies, so that they just haven't grown into their necks yet. Okay, but if you're drawing like an older person, their shoulders would be like here. Like, look at how far up I put this person's shoulders. Okay, because as you age, right, you start to hunch over a little bit. So even though you technically still have a neck, it's much more forward. So shoulder placement is depends on the age of the person. Like, I have a really long neck, so my neck is more like this. Okay, but some people have shorter necks, and older people, their shoulder line would like almost be at their mouth, kind of like here. So this is something I teach in my first module of figure drawing, is human proportions, young and old. That's something that everybody should learn. It's very easy. It's just like a set of principles. Because a lot of times, like, you'll draw a character and then they're supposed to be female but they look male, or they're supposed to be young but they look old, and you're like, what's going on? Well, it's proportions. Okay, so I drew a head from the side, same principle. Okay, so I took half of this circle, right, and then I added it to the bottom, so same thing. And then one thing I see everybody get wrong is necks. They'll draw a neck, and like, I feel like I repeat myself over and over again, but like, they draw a neck and they're like, boom, I got a neck. Look at me, I drew a neck. And I'm like, that neck looks so stiff. They have to go to the chiropractor. It's just like, no, the neck, that neck looks painful. Yeah, we're gonna go this way. Okay. Necks should always curve back because they attach to your rib cage, which moves forward. So it kind of attaches like this to your rib cage. Okay. I'm not going to get into rib cage. Don't get me started on human anatomy. I can go on forever. We're drawing a side profile. Okay. So you can see the shield here. Shout out to our shield. But yeah, you can see the shield, right? You can see it here attached to the ball. And then what we're going to do is we are going to draw a nose. So just like that nose is kind of where that circle is, right? Same thing with this face. So you find the bottom of the circle. I drew the circle a little bit long, but you find the bottom of the circle and then you bring it over here and there's your nose. And then what you do is you just kind of draw in the shape of the nose. And just keep in mind that like noses come in all shapes and sizes. So if you're drawing a nose and you're like, Ba-boom! Here's a nose. Like, okay, that's cool. That nose is gonna look a little bit older. You know, maybe it's not a nose you want to put on a baby. Okay. Younger noses look more like this. Okay, so if you're drawing like a female nose, they might tilt upwards a little bit more. Or if you're drawing like a child, females tend to have more like closer to childish proportions than males do. Again, that's a very general statement, but everybody's different, but just generally speaking. Okay. Okay, so this shape that we were referring to in the skull, it's right here. And this is what causes that indentation in the nose and what builds up the forehead. Okay, so you can see the ball, like the ball is still here, but we're building on top of that ball. So I added the nose and then I found that indentation and then I'm bringing it up. Okay. And then a lot of people will struggle with mouths, and that's because they put the mouths like right on this line and they're like, boom, there's the middle and there's my mouth. And you're like, whoa, that looks super weird. No, let's bring the mouth line to over here. Okay, so that's the opening of the mouth. So let's say I want the opening to be like that. The trick to drawing good mouths on like a profile view is to add a little bit of a fleshy part. So go ahead and feel your mouth. You'll notice that like it's not right on your bone, like your lips have a thickness. Okay, so that thickness is what you want to draw on top of the skull. Okay, you'll notice that that thickness goes right to your skull. Right here, like right on top of your chin, right where it begins. And then your chin is also more fleshy, hopefully. Not everybody has a chin, but you know, if you did, that's kind of what it would look like. And then you can draw in your mouth. Okay, so then I would put in the lip here. Then I would put in the bottom of the lip like that. And look, it's a mouth. It's a mouth, people. Oh, I hate shading with mechanical pencil. Unless I'm cross-hatching, which is going to be a different lesson. But there you go. There's a mouth. Nostril would be about here. And so, you know, if you're not on our Discord yet, it's like a wonderful place for art nerds to connect. It's where we post all of our demos. You get lots of free stuff on our Discord. And also you'll have access to community critique, like critique from really, really talented people in our community that they are willing to give out of the kindness of their hearts and not ask for anything back. It's really, really incredible. Our community, I really can't say enough good things about our community. So if you haven't joined the Discord yet, be sure to do that so that you can get my notes afterwards. Okay, so for eyes, a lot of people will draw eyes like this. Like they draw a side eye and they're like this. Like, yay, that's my eye from the side. And I'm like, wait a second. That means if you draw an eye like this, then that means the entire eye is like this long, right? And that looks super weird. Side eyes are not that long. They are actually much shorter than we think. So it's really like a triangle shape. Like that's it. It's just like a triangle shape. Almost like the letter A. If you look at it from the side, it kind of looks like a letter A, right? there we go. We're going to draw the eye. Make sure that the eye is not too wide. That's a common mistake. And then eyebrows. We're going to draw in the eyebrows as well. So, you know, I'm making this up. But if you can kind of draw it once, then you'll be able to draw it like forever, hopefully. So all these lessons are free, and you will have access to the video afterwards. The replay will always be there. So, you know, if you know somebody who's just learning how to draw, definitely let them know about our streams. We are streaming Monday nights now. Mondays as well as Saturdays. So there we go. I'll give her some hair, maybe a ponytail like me. And so that's how you would draw a face from the side. You like to draw with realistic proportions. Once you know how to draw realistic proportions, then like you can draw anything, right? You can really draw anything out of your head. Because like I could exaggerate her. I could make her eyes bigger. I could make her, you know, I could give her a really big chin or no chin, but like generally speaking, if you know how to draw accurate proportions, everything else is easy. So, yeah, there we go. We got a face from the side. I'm not going to go too much with her ear, but imagine the other side is this guy. All right. So, hopefully you learned a thing or two today. I'm just going to catch up with the chat here and see. Yeah, like I know that like because I've been teaching for a really long time, I do see some of the like the same kind of mistakes over and over and over again. And so today I really like the goal of this stream was to address some of those most common mistakes and show you guys how to overcome it. Yeah, so what did we draw today? In case you didn't join from the beginning. We went over pencil basics, pencil pressure, not smudging. We drew ourselves a nice grayscale, right? Using our pencils. We went over perspective and the basics of perspective. We went over POV, isometric versus perspective, vanishing points versus no vanishing points. We went over cylinders and how to not make them look flat. And then we went over types of shadows so that you can draw like a wizard. And then we drew faces. So these are some of the most common things that people struggle with. And so if you want my notes, be sure to join the Discord. We love art nerds at Wing Canvas, and we are here to serve you guys. So join the biggest art nerd community on Discord, and you'll be able to get our notes as well as pings whenever we are live. So Kevin, who's in the chat, he's our Discord admin, and he's really helpful. So when you join the Discord, you will be in very good hands. And I also want to thank our incredible Patreon members and YouTube members for supporting our mission to make art education easily accessible to everyone. So it's because of you guys that we are able to make these streams and to teach for free so that everybody around the world can tune in and start learning their art. So again, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. And we're not just a YouTube channel, we are an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. So if you're an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord. And the monthly challenge, don't forget, we have a monthly challenge every month. This month is Future Fantasy. So submit your artwork on the Discord for a chance to be featured. And yeah, if you have any other questions, maybe I will see you on the Discord. And coming up this Saturday, this Saturday is going to be our 11th anniversary stream, and we're going to be doing some giveaways, and all of our creators will be here live. So Jesse, Josh, Iggy, myself, and Arunya, and our lovely mods, we will all be here for an online party. We're going to be playing games, we're going to be doing giveaways. It's going to be a big AMA stream, so definitely come out and join us. All right. How do the giveaways work? You have to be here live. So if you're here live, you will have a chance to win some awesome prizes, and everybody's invited. So you can invite your friends and they can enter for you. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you on Saturday. Bye-bye.